The year 2025 is coming to an end, and yet the Russian army is still being worn down near Chasiv Yar and Pokrovsk. There's not even any talk anymore about capturing the entire Donetsk region. Even though Putin boasted to Trump that he would take all of Donbass back in the summer.
Of course. Of course. Of course.
Now the occupiers are advancing very slowly at the cost of tremendous effort and losses. Putin is paying for his shattered sense of greatness with hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers. The year 2025 has set a record for losses for the aggressor. The summer offensive literally drowned in blood.
The summer offensive became the deadliest for Russian troops in the entire war, according to the British magazine The Economist. According to their data, about 31,000 Russian soldiers have died at the front since May 1st.
It is important to note that since January of this year, for example, 100,000 Russian soldiers have been killed. Killed, not just casualties. These are not total losses.
October in general became a golden period for funeral services in the swamps. In just this 1 month, the Russians lost 25,000 people. That is 1.5 times more than the USSR lost in 10 years in Afghanistan.
There haven't been any successes there, meaning they've lost people, they've lost equipment. As for the results, well, I don't know what they're officially claiming, but in reality, there are no results. Go ahead and amass as many people as you want, amass them. In the end, these people will simply die. And at best, they'll advance some position by 100 meters. The recent assault where the 114th Brigade showed up, remember when they pushed forward, everyone was like, wow, what a breakthrough. But what happened? They got cut off. With
each passing day, the losses are growing at a wild rate because the Kremlin ghouls want to capture at least something before the end of the year, even if it's just ruins. As a result, in the battle for the ruins, the Russians have already lost more people than lived in these cities before the invasion. But they keep driving Yemel to the slaughter because the Pale Führer and his generals have already reported grand victories. Everyone's been surrounded, everyone's been demilitarized, but only on paper. Now, Russian soldiers are paying for Kremlin bravado with their lives. Well,
an assault trooper, like me, an assault trooper. And as an assault trooper, we don't live long. There's this drone there, Baba Yaga. It can take out an entire regiment or something like that. Basically everyone, just like that. Right now it's a meat grinder out there.
Z channels admit that the battle for Pokrovsk has already surpassed the Bakhmut meat grinder in scale. Back then, the occupiers buried about 40,000 people in the ground.
We still haven't managed to completely encircle Pokrovsk geographically. And that's why we're forced to push them out, meaning we have to fight urban battles. And the losses there are very heavy, of course, on both sides. For us, they're comparable to Bakhmut, to the battles for Bakhmut. Remember, when Yevgeny Prigozhin was still alive, he announced that figure. 20,000 Wagner fighters killed just for Bakhmut. And there was probably no fewer from the units that are directly under the Ministry of Defense. And I want to remind you that when the Wehrmacht took Poland in September 1939, its losses were just over 20,000.
Just think about it. The Wehrmacht, with those losses, captured all of Poland, while Putin's army can't even take the Donetsk region. Naturally, the ultra-patriots are starting to get discouraged and are asking uncomfortable questions more and more boldly.
What the hell?
Let me remind you that it was after the battle for Bakhmut, due to the horrific losses, that Prigozhin's mutiny happened. And the army essentially supported him.
Most of the military support us wholeheartedly. We keep getting messages. Thank you, guys. Finally, there will truly be justice in the army at long last. At last, you'll make absolutely sure that we actually get the supplies we need and that they finally stop sending us out just to be slaughtered over and over again.
Naturally, the same thing can and should happen again after Pokrovsk. Especially since the occupying army is now in an even worse situation and is suffering even greater losses. The treatment of soldiers has also become harsher. The shocking statistics speak for themselves. For everyone killed, there is about 1 wounded. 1 to 1. This is truly beyond comprehension. The Russians simply abandon their wounded to die, or they immediately send them back into the assault, until they are killed.
What is happening is beyond words. They will go to any lengths to accomplish their mission. The utter lawlessness going on here can't be explained or described in any way. Never under any circumstances sign a contract, whether you're from prison or a civilian, whether you want to clear your record or make money. Do you know what's happening here?
Those who refuse to go on suicide assaults are tortured or eliminated. The Russian soldier is officially a disposable item thrown away after use. What about the equipment for those who aren't planning to go?
It's a nightmare. What's happening here? So many guys have already died. Friends, loved ones. I had an acquaintance. Well, more like someone I knew from a group of friends. He was there for 2 days. That's it, they brought him back in a body bag.
The most successful Russian tactic is the so-called infiltration. The idea is for the infantry to run through the kill zone and hide somewhere. But the kill zone isn't called that for nothing. On average, out of 3 people, at best only one makes it and waits in cover until a few more lucky ones reach him the same way. As a result, all the fields and roads are strewn with boys in their underwear.
So many bodies blown up.
Lost a leg, either from a blast, a drop, or running. I don't know. It's probably been a week already. I'm really hungry. There are a lot of corpses, a whole lot. The leaves have fallen. I don't know where to go. I don't see any villages, nothing at all. No berries, nothing at all. Where do I run? How do I survive? I hope I survive.
The Russian army is incapable of large-scale, deep breakthroughs. All it can do is spend years capturing small towns, burying them in corpses. And this has no strategic significance whatsoever. Because after a hypothetical Pokrovsk, they'll have to lose another 100,000 just to take the next small town. Naturally, demoralization among the occupiers grows with every passing minute. There is no prospect of victory. There isn't even a terrible end, only endless horror. Even the ultra-patriots, the war zealots, the rabid Russian fascists have started screaming that the so-called special military operation needs to be ended immediately. No one believes in victory anymore.
We won't achieve victory in the way we've dreamed of it. And that's why...
In what sense?
Well, because we simply won't get it. It's a process, really. It's not an outcome. We imagined victory like in 1945, the red flag over the Reichstag, and we've won. That kind of victory just isn't going to happen now. And in Ukraine, it has never happened in that form. When we reunited with Little Russia with Ukraine in the 17th century, we fought for another 12 years after that, barely managed to reclaim the left bank, and took Kyiv on lease. And after that, we kept dealing with the Ukrainian issue all the way up to Catherine, which was, what, well, about 150 years.
If even diehards like Prelpin have become disillusioned with the meat grinder, then what can you expect from the non-systemic commoners? Everyone refers to the Tsar's mental abilities as deep concern because Pina lives in a parallel reality where he's about to divide the world with America, capture Kyiv and Odessa. Russian soldiers are provided with everything they need and are armed with the most modern, unparalleled weaponry. This is still how Putin imagines the Russian army. But this is what the Russian army actually looks like. It's so-called elite frontline units. Shabby, riding rusty Zhigulis, they really look like marauders from the movie Mad Max. The old man is clearly out of touch with reality, just like everyone around him. That's why the ultra-patriots are scared. After all, the army is on the verge of collapse and mutiny. The soldiers hate the officers and don't want to die. The officers hate the soldiers for not wanting to die. All of them together hate the Kremlin for throwing them into a senseless hell. It's no wonder the Z supporters are panicking, shouting, and demanding to pull out of the war. They're afraid of a mutiny in the army. They're afraid that hundreds of thousands of embittered killers and marauders will abandon the front and flood into Mother Russia in search of justice.
This is a time bomb that it's already becoming clear that if the process of halting hostilities continues to develop the way it is now, it will end sooner or later. All these people who have received weapons, who have been through the war, some of whom have a very serious criminal past, these people have to be addressed and dealt with somehow, by the authorities.
The officers, of course, are trying to keep the soldiers in line with terrifying methods that we cannot show on YouTube. And we wouldn't, out of moral conviction. Russians are killing and maiming other Russians en masse in order to fight against Ukrainians. The Russian world is senseless and merciless.
How can humanity grow up? Well, I was about to say something, but it sounds kind of stupid. Well, go ahead. To go to war. To go to war, yes. To go to war for your family, for your people, for your happiness, for your future, for your children. Because when we've all fought, that's when we'll stop being children. What the hell are you talking about?
At the beginning of the invasion, everyone was asking, how many people does Russia have to lose to stop? What should be the critical number of losses for the Russian people to rise up and say, enough is enough? Unfortunately, it turned out that the level of indifference toward others among the Russian people is very high. In Tula, they don't care about the bombings in Belgorod, and in Smolensk, they don't care about the fighting in the Kursk region. No one cares that in a single apartment building, 10 people have been bagged up in Ukraine. But even such an extreme level of indifference has its limits. And now the loyal serfs are starting to wake up, tearing themselves away from their TV screens and being stunned by the harsh reality where the growth of cemeteries can only be rivaled by the rise in gasoline prices. And the life of a Russian person is worth less than an old toilet seat ring. If Russians don't come to their senses, Putin will send a few more million of them to their deaths under the slogan of protecting Russians.
Ironic.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.
The Putin regime is not only one of the bloodiest in modern history, but also one of the most foolish. The Russian Führer managed to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of Russians and failed to achieve a single goal. Moreover, he only made things worse. Putin accomplished what seemed impossible. He turned Kharkiv, the most Russian-speaking and Russia-friendly city in Ukraine, into a stronghold of Russophobia and a symbol of the Ukrainian people's struggle for independence.
Missiles arrive faster than the air raid sirens sound. The city is without power, partially destroyed but alive and undefeated. Kharkiv residents work, Kharkiv residents live.
For the past 100 years, Kharkiv has been very close to Russia, both geographically and culturally. Throughout the entire history of Ukraine's independence, people there consistently voted for pro-Russian political forces and even elected the most notorious figures, simply because they supported friendship between nations.
Misha, we're rewriting everything. Your face looks boring. No one will give you any money like that.
But then, Putin had an imperial stroke in his head, and with all the KGB-driven fanaticism, he rushed to reclaim what he considered originally Russian lands. Well, originally from the perspective of an imperial fascist worldview. He annexed Crimea, started a bloodbath in Donbass, and tried to repeat all that horror in Kharkiv. For those who don't know, that very Motorola first appeared in Kharkiv.
An appeal from the peoples of Kharkiv region to Russia, and personally to Putin, as well as from the defenders of the city of Kharkiv. An appeal and response from the city of Kharkiv.
At that time, hundreds of Russians, posing as local tractor drivers, arrived and tried to seize the city administration building. But the people of Kharkiv had a different opinion. The local residents met the newcomers harshly, and the DNR in Kharkiv failed spectacularly. Moreover, it was in Kharkiv that the famous hit about the dictator first appeared. Putin! After that, Kharkiv football fans even helped repel the intervention in Odessa during the events of May 2nd. Pro-Russian militants, under the cover of the police, tried to stage a coup in the city, but were met with Ukrainian reality. In fact, the people of Kharkiv thwarted Putin's plans to occupy the entire southeast of Ukraine. One can only imagine how surprised they must have been in the Kremlin, because in their fevered minds, Kharkiv is a Russian city, inhabited exclusively by Russians who sleep with loaves of bread under their pillows, just in case. They need to welcome Russian soldiers at any moment. That's what happens when you start believing your own propaganda. But it takes a long time for the thick-headed to catch on, and Moscow tried once again to capture Kharkiv in 2022. Again, hoping for a warm welcome. But the welcome was not just warm, it was fiery. Tigers burned just like in 43, but there was a nuance.
They decided to go through with it, but didn't bother to change the plan. The troops were tasked with meeting up with the pro-Russian militia, which no longer existed. Instead, they ran into units of the 92nd Brigade, the Cord Police Special Forces, the Omega Special Unit, and the local Territorial Defense, which was made up of former Azov members, Freikorps, the local Right Sector Cell, and other volunteers. One of the Russian detachments, which had 5 lightly armored Tiger vehicles, was stopped in the Koryakino Sad area.
After Kharkiv refused to surrender and has been fiercely resisting for 4 years now, the Russians have come to hate it even more than Lviv. Because the veil of lies was torn away, and it turned out that Kharkiv is not Russian at all. It is the main anti-Russian city. Now, out of helplessness, resentment, and stupidity, propaganda openly demands to wipe Kharkiv, until recently considered an originally Russian city, off the face of the earth.
In war, it is not this side or that side that wins, but the fierce ones. The fierce ones! Those who break the enemy's will to resist. So I will say it again. Now we have finally started to take them out for good. There will be no life in Kharkiv, nor in Poltava, nor in Mykolaiv, nor in Odessa. There will be no such cities, there will be no Kyiv.
If Russians read at least a little or took any interest in history, instead of getting their knowledge from Solovyov's garbage dumps, they would know that Kharkiv was never a Russian city. It was founded by Ukrainians, built by Ukrainians, and now it is being defended by Ukrainians.
Ukrainian troops have liberated more than 300 settlements in the Kharkiv region in a week of counteroffensive, said Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Defense Hanna Maliar. According to her, this amounts to almost 4,000 square kilometers.
Kharkiv was founded in the mid-17th century by Ukrainian Cossacks, settlers from the Poltava region and Right Bank Ukraine. The region was immediately named Sloboda Ukraine, or simply Slobozhanshchina. Ukrainians fled Polish oppression to these sparsely populated, undeveloped lands and turned them not only into flourishing cities, but also into a center of Ukrainian science and culture.
I simply couldn't not come here and tell you about this city because it's clearly one of those places where, as I've always said, I would feel comfortable living.
Already in the 1650s to 1670s, there were Cossack regiments in Slobozhanshchina, the Kharkiv Regiment, the Izium, Ostrogozhsk, Akhturka, and Sumy regiments. A regiment was not just a military unit. At that time, a regiment was a territorial administrative unit. They had their own self-government, elected authorities, and courts. In Russia, they've still never heard of anything like that. In letters and chronicles, Moscow voivodes openly complained that the Sloboda Cossacks lived according to Ukrainian customs and did not obey the Tsar's rules. Slobozhanshchina, with Kharkiv as its center, was in fact a Ukrainian autonomy within the Moscow state. Even during the repressive reforms of Peter the Great, when Cossack self-government began to be abolished, the local population continued to consider themselves Ukrainians or Cherkasy. If someone had called them Russians, they might have gotten a pitchfork blow below the waterline. Even back then, the people of Kharkiv knew very well that the Tsar With each year of occupation, Russia intensified ethnocide and carried out forced Russification. But now Russian ultra-patriots will clutch their black little hearts because it was Kharkiv that became the center of resistance to Russification and the stronghold of Ukrainian revival. And the center of cultural resistance was Kharkiv University, which began its work in 1805. If the Muscovites thought they would use it to brainwash the population with Russian gruel, something went wrong. Its professors and students organized the Kharkiv School of Romantics, which brought together writers, ethnographers, and historians. They essentially shaped the Ukrainian literary and national idea. Among them were Grigory Kvitka Osnovianenko, Mykola Kostomarov, and Panteleimon Kulish, who wrote and published the first Ukrainian grammar and the first Ukrainian language primer.
It was published in his printing house. In one of his letters, Panteleimon Kulish wrote to the printing house that it should be produced inexpensively, so that it would be accessible to a large number of people. 5,000 copies were printed.
In the second half of the 19th century, during the total ban on the Ukrainian language and culture, an underground resistance movement operated in Kharkiv. Ukrainian books were secretly published and children were secretly educated. And in the 20th century, a true Ukrainian revolution began. In 1905, Prosvita, a Ukrainian cultural and educational society, was established in Kharkiv. At the same time, Ukrainian political parties emerged. The Revolutionary Ukrainian Party and the Ukrainian Social Democrats. And now, both the ultra-patriots and the imperialists will have to clutch their hearts once again, because it was in Kharkiv, even before the First World War, that Ukrainian high school students began using the slogan, "Glory to Ukraine."
Glory to Ukraine!
Glory to the brave and heroic heroes!
In the summer of 1917, the Ukrainian blue and yellow flag was raised over the Kharkiv City Council. But unfortunately, already in December 1917, Kharkiv was occupied by the Bolsheviks and declared the capital of Soviet Ukraine. Why do you think the occupiers chose Kharkiv as the capital of Ukraine? Because in their view, Kharkiv was a Ukrainian city. They didn't control Kiev, so they chose the second largest Ukrainian center after Kiev.
The October Revolution, the Civil War, and the creation of the Soviet Union radically changed the life of Kharkiv. From a large but provincial city, it turned into the capital of Ukraine.
The city literally spoke Ukrainian. Signs, books, theater, cinema, everything was Ukrainian. But then, after the war, the Bolsheviks recovered and organized repressions, the Holodomor and the Gulag. As a result, Kharkiv was Russified and partially populated by people from the swamps who saw electric lights and running water for the first time in Kharkiv.
People truly love you and they're waiting for you with open arms. I want to do things for you, even... I can do anything for you. I can even sing songs for you. Your eyes.
But even under total Russian pressure, Kharkiv and its people preserved their Ukrainian identity and proved it during the Russian aggression. Ukrainian Kharkiv will definitely endure and outlast yet another collapse of the pseudo-empire.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.